Cinephiles, film enthusiasts, and relaxation seekers. My name is Cinephile ASMR, and today we are talking about Creed 3. I honestly don't really have a great relationship with many sports films, but the one exception I will say time and time again is boxing movies. When they are done right, they feel like a 1-2 uppercut to the gut in emotion and fun, like with Warriors, Southpaw, and especially the Rocky and Creed franchises. When they do it right, they really knock it out of the park, and I have adored Creed 1 with Ryan Coogler's vision, his storytelling, and the way that the movie unfolds, and I really like Creed 2. Not as good as the first, but I still thoroughly enjoy it, while it also carries with it that emotional level. And with Creed 3, I was very fascinated from what I was hearing from the talent alone. This being Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. Are you kidding me? What is Creed 3 about, though? After the events of Creed 2, you follow Adonis Creed and his wife, along with their new child, as he's really on the height of his career within his boxing, as he decides to take a step back and focus on his family. Things are going excellent until an old past friend comes rising out of nowhere with Damien, who is hungry to prove himself again as a once renowned boxer who had to serve time in prison looking to regain his title. I'll also say this though, when I saw the trailers for this movie, I wasn't really in love with it. I think to me the biggest sell is Michael B. Jordan taking the helm as not only the director but star of his title character in the movie. I will make the statement right here to really jump off how I feel about this movie. After Creed 3, I really think the legitimate conversation of putting the Creed trilogy up there as the greatest of all time needs to happen, because Creed 3 was a knockout through and through. You know, I think with the boxing formula, it can often feel like a rinse, dry, repeat. You know, there's always going to be those staple things that need to happen in a boxing film. The training montage, the highs and lows, the pitfalls, the conflict. But when you're talking about a third film in a franchise thus far that has done pretty dang well, you gotta kind of ask yourself, what are they gonna do to make it feel fresh? And I think having Michael B. Jordan, an actor who has worked with so many different lights and visionaries, really taking that and turning it into something of his own, along with Ryan Coogler helping craft the story and just a brilliant team behind it, you get the answer to that. With one of the biggest positives of this film really being what it prioritizes. You know, when you have the first Creed, it really is about Adonis and Rocky's relationship, with the second Creed being Adonis growing his family with Bianca, their new child. And the third one really does kind of focus on the internal conflict that Adonis has now that Damien, who was once an old friend, turned into a very tumultuous relationship, has brought with it. And that through line really offers a varied sense of strong variety, which also bleeds into how the film is presented. This very much feels like the most emotional entry in the franchise, with having Adonis kind of play this role of a fatherly figure with his daughter, and it also has him take a step back from boxing for a great majority of the film. So you get to really understand where he is at this point in his life, where he has to start prioritizing a lot as a father, as a husband, but also as a man who is sort of broken from past events and traumas that have influenced a lot of what he is now. And it explores that side of Adonis who has gone through this system, who has been really neglected, and I loved how in the first Creed that was very much touched on, and the second one definitely changed that in a lot of ways by evolving into a different story, but this brought it back, and it felt almost like a full circle moment, and I would imagine there's going to be sequels, and if not, this is totally a perfect end to that, because Michael B. Jordan offers a beautifully vulnerable emotional depth to himself, and that's just on screen. I'm going to say that this is probably up there with one of my favorite directorial debuts of all time. From the opening shot that sets you within the young Damien and Adonis lifestyle within a night in their life, you follow in this beautiful long take that has them exit a car and go into a building, and from that moment on, I knew I was in the hands of a filmmaker that understood what they wanted. And it really does set the mood for what this film is like. It really puts you in the perspective of two different young men at the time, grown into adults, straying in different paths. And with Damien, I was very surprised with how much screen time we got with Jonathan Majors. And let me just say this, every comment that people have been saying about his performance with Kang, I feel needs to be amplified times 2 as Damien, not just from the physical oiled up muscles that this man has. He literally can crack probably like the strongest of coconuts with his pecs. This dude is a menace. But it comes down to why Jonathan Majors was casted, which I see is because of the layers and nuance that he gives. You see why he reacts the way he does in accordance to what Adonis has gone with in his life, the fame and fortune which he has accumulated while Damien has been locked behind bars, the reasons why he got there, how he acts outside of it. It's not as if he immediately has a vendetta over Adonis the moment he gets out, but merely the fact that Adonis plays as a roadblock or an obstacle to get for what Damien is looking for. With all of it honestly offering some genuine moments where you see the two fighting separately and then eventually together, and at least you understand where each are coming from. And I think that gets lost a lot, especially the biggest example for me being the First Grade film. I adore that movie. I think it is one of the greatest films of the last 10 years, but I do think the villain is severely lacking, very one note, and I would argue in Creed 3 it is the most fleshed out villain in the entire franchise. He is angry, he wants revenge at the world, but to a point, and the way that it kind of builds, ebbs and flows to get to where it does in that grand finale had my heart racing. My theater was energized. There was applause, there was gasp, and I think it comes down again to Michael B. Jordan's keen vision. I hear a lot of people with B. Jordan even saying himself that the influences are on his sleeve, with the anime influence, with just the filmmakers that he's been inspired by. And there's a couple of shots in this movie, especially because it's more about the calculated plays that a boxer does instead of just the brutal punches that are taken with Rocky. It is the precision that you have to have in your mind. And there's a few slow-mo shots where Adonis is analyzing the vulnerable spots of his opponent that it just floored me. The cinematography in this is sharp, and it's so truly emotional as well, with the relationship Adonis has with Bianca and his daughter just being so wonderfully interwoven. And I have to give credit to where credit's given with Mila Davis Kent, who plays Adonis's daughter, a first-time actress who is deaf, which I just think is also another beautiful factor that I was not expecting in this film. The two biggest surprises being not just obviously Michael B. Jordan's direction, but the way that it focuses so much on representation and a celebration of a culture. You will see it in the costuming, you will see it in the interactions, and it truly did feel like a labor of love between Michael B. Jordan, between Ryan Coogler, and everyone involved. But I think to me the thing that won me over by the end of this was the idea that this movie really goes to prove that male vulnerability influences a lot of the feelings that men have. From the male structure set into place to the way that we kind of have to adopt that. You see Adonis and Damien both vulnerable, but also withdrawing themselves from the things that make them feel that way. And I think ultimately the way that they kind of clash and combine together by the end, it had me in awe, just from a performance level, but also the way the story narratively interweaves that idea that these issues that are propagated by men are dealt with eventually because of that weight by the men that inhabit it. And I might be reading way too deep into it, but it struck me very, very hard. I think truthfully the only flaw that I can have is that the score is lacking in comparison to the composer of the last two who did Black Panther, The Mandalorian, Tenet. He is an all-star, but obviously he was busy with Wakanda Forever, so I understand. The soundtrack though was bumping. Again, I came into this wanting to have fun, but I got out of it an incredible directorial debut AEW, a celebration of culture, a conflict unlike any boxing film I have seen. It reaches heights not only in the Creed franchise, not only in the Rocky franchise, but in boxing films as a whole. It is melodramatic and cheesy at points, but I ate it up like candy, and it really serves Michael B. Jordan in this sort of new era of his career where I honestly can tell the passion that he has from interviews, seeing that it took him 3 years to make this. This was a true labor of love for everyone involved. So with all that being said, even with the score that was not as good as the other two, I gotta give Creed 3 a resounding A. What is your favorite Creed film down below? Tell me your thoughts. I love you all so very much, and remember to take life one frame at a time.